hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Cameron Dillard stood outside his daughter's bedroom, knocked twice, and waited. "Ava, you up, sweetheart?" A muffled yet came from inside. Cam pushed the door open to find Ava sitting cross-legged on her bed, a worn paperback in her lap. Morning light filtered through her curtains, casting a soft glow across bookshelves packed with fantasy novels and classics. "Today's the big Hollingsworth barbecue," Cam said, leaning against the doorframe. He watched his daughter's shoulders tense. "I know," she murmured, still not meeting his eyes. Cam sat at the edge of her bed. "You planning on going?" Ava looked up, her eyes studying his face. "Do I have a choice?" "Always," Cam said firmly. "You always have a choice with me." Ava dog-eared her page and closed the book. "Taryn will be upset if I don't go." "I'm not asking what Taryn wants. I'm asking what you want." A small smile tugged at Ava's mouth. "Dad, I don't think there's a teenager alive who wants to spend Saturday at a family barbecue." "Fair enough," Cam chuckled. "But I'll be there. I'll stay close." Ava's smile faded. "Like last year?" The question hung between them. Cam felt a familiar weight in his chest, the memory of watching his daughter endure subtle jabs while he tried to navigate his new in-laws. "No," he said firmly. "Not like last year." "You promise?" "I promise. Anyone gives you a hard time, you give me a signal." "What kind of signal?" Amusement crossed her face. "I don't know. Pull your ear. Say, gee, I sure do love calculus." That earned him a genuine laugh, a sound that had become too rare in their house. Cam squeezed her shoulder gently. "I mean it, Ava. I let too much slide." "Not anymore." Ava nodded, but before she could respond, Taryn's voice rang through the house. "Cameron, have you told Ava to start getting ready? Mother expects everyone by noon." Cam rolled his eyes, making Ava smile again. "I'll let you get dressed," he said, standing. "Wear whatever makes you comfortable." "Dad, I was thinking of wearing Mom's lavender dress. The one she had made for me before." She didn't finish the sentence. "She didn't have to. I think that would be perfect," Cam said softly as he closed the door and found Taryn at the end of the hall, immaculately dressed in white capris and a silk blouse. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. "She's getting ready," Cam said before Taryn could speak. "Good. I laid out that cute yellow sundress I bought her. The lavender one is so outdated." Cam felt his jaw tighten. "She's wearing the lavender dress." "Cameron, be reasonable. That dress is from 2 years ago. Mother always notices these things." "I don't give a damn what your mother notices." Taryn's eyes widened. "What's gotten into you?" "Nothing," Cam said, moving past her toward the stairs. "Just stating facts. Don't you walk away when I'm talking to you." Taryn hissed, grabbing his arm. "This is important." Cam stopped and looked at her manicured fingers on his forearm. Deliberately, he removed her hand. "You're right," he said coolly. "This is important. My daughter is going to wear what makes her comfortable." End of discussion. He continued downstairs, ignoring Taryn's huffed protests. In the kitchen, he poured coffee and looked out at the backyard, a small but neat space with raised garden beds he and Ava had built last spring. 30 minutes later, Ava entered the kitchen wearing the lavender dress, a simple cotton piece with a modest neckline. Her dark hair was pulled back with a headband. "You look beautiful," Cam said. "It's too small," Taryn snapped, appearing in the doorway. "Look, it's tight across the shoulders." "It fits fine," Ava said quietly, but with resolve. Taryn opened her mouth to argue, but Cam cut her off. "Ava looks perfect. We should get going." Taryn's nostrils flared. She grabbed her designer purse from the counter. "Fine, but don't complain to me when everyone else is dressed properly." She stalked out toward the garage. Cam exchanged a look with Ava, who shrugged with a small smile. He gave her a wink and followed Taryn, his hand resting briefly on Ava's shoulder as they walked. The drive to the Hollingsworth estate took 20 minutes, during which Taryn lectured them about etiquette and making good impressions. Cam half listened, watching the scenery change from their middle-class neighborhood to the upscale outskirts of Asheville. "Are you even listening to me?" Taryn demanded as they turned onto the private drive. "Every word." Cam lied smoothly. In the rearview mirror, he caught Ava's eye. She bit her lip to suppress a smile. The Hollingsworth estate sprawled across 5 acres of manicured landscape. The main house, a colonial revival with white columns, sat atop a gentle rise, overlooking gardens that could have been featured in a magazine. As Cam pulled their SUV into the circular driveway, he counted at least a dozen luxury vehicles. "Remember," Taryn said, checking her makeup, "Mother's been stressed about this barbecue for weeks. She's trying to impress the Caldwells." Cam resisted pointing out that a barbecue featuring catered food and staff in uniforms wasn't really a barbecue at all. "We'll be on our best behavior," he said instead. Catching Ava's eye again as they walked up to the front door, Taryn smoothed her hair and plastered on a bright smile. Cam placed a protective hand on Ava's back. The door swung open before they could knock. Vivica Hollingsworth stood in the entrance, resplendent in an expensive-looking cream pantsuit, her silver-streaked blonde hair coiffed to perfection. "Taryn, darling," she exclaimed, pulling her daughter into a delicate hug. "You look lovely. That blouse is Valentino, isn't it?" "Good eye, Mother," Taryn beamed. Vivica nodded approvingly, then turned to Cam. "Cameron," she said, her smile cooling. "I see you managed to make it on time for once." "Wouldn't miss it, Vivica," Cam replied evenly. Finally, her gaze fell on Ava, and her expression shifted to distaste. "Hello," she said, without addressing Ava by name. "Everyone's in the back. Run along." Ava didn't move. "Hello, Mrs. Hollingsworth," she said politely. "Thank you for having us." Vivica's smile tightened. She turned back to Taryn without acknowledging Ava's greeting. "Brantley's brought the most fascinating woman. Candace, something her father owns half of Charlotte." "Candace Thornton?" Taryn gasped. "I read about her in Carolina's Style. The very same. Come, you must meet her." Vivica linked arms with Taryn and swept her inside, leaving Cam and Ava standing in the doorway. Cam squeezed Ava's shoulder. "You okay?" "I'm used to it," Ava said with a small shrug. "You shouldn't have to be." They made their way through the house, past gleaming floors and furniture that looked more suited to a museum than a home. Through the windows, Cam could see the backyard transformed into an entertainment venue. White tents covered seating areas, and staff in black and white uniforms circulated with drinks. A string quartet played near the rose garden. As they stepped onto the patio, Cam heard a familiar voice. "Well, if it isn't my favorite brother-in-law." And look, he brought the charity case. Brantley Hollingsworth approached them, drink in hand. He was dressed in salmon-colored shorts and a polo shirt with his father's company logo. "Brantley," Cam nodded curtly. "Still living off your dad's name, I see." Brantley's smile faltered briefly before returning. "And still building decks for people who can't afford contractors with actual credentials. Not everyone needs to overcompensate with fancy logos," Cam replied evenly. Brantley turned to Ava, and little Ava, "My, haven't you grown?" His eyes lingered on her dress. "Interesting choice. Very vintage." "It was my mother's," Ava said quietly. "Ah, yes. The first Mrs. Dillard. What was her name again?" "Clara?" "Christine." "Chloe," Cam said, his voice dropping dangerously. "Her name was Chloe." Right. Tragic business, that." Brantley took a sip of his drink, not looking remotely sorry. "Well, enjoy the party. There's food for everyone, even those with simpler tastes." He sauntered away, joining similarly dressed men near one of the bars. "I want to go home," Ava whispered. Cam looked down at her. Her face was composed, but he could see the hurt in her eyes. "We can leave whenever you want," he said. "Just say the word." She shook her head. "It'll only make things worse. Taryn will be upset." "Let her be upset." "No, it's okay. I can handle it." Ava straightened her shoulders. "Besides, you promised to stay close, remember? Like glue," Cam assured her. They moved further into the party. Guests clustered across the lawn, their laughter mingling with the music. Cam recognized a few faces, business associates of Vivica's husband, Jeffrey, who was notably absent, friends of Taryn's from college, and various members of the extended Hollingsworth clan, and no one approached them. Occasionally, someone would offer a brief nod or tight smile, but mostly they were ignored. Kept in mind, he had no desire to make small talk with people who measured worth by bank accounts. but he hated watching Ava being treated as an outsider. From across the lawn, he spotted Taryn holding court with her mother and several women in designer sundresses. She laughed too loudly at something Vivica said, throwing her head back in a practiced gesture. Cam wondered who his wife became when she was around her family. "There's lemonade." Ava pointed to a beverage table. "Want some?" "Lead the way," Cam said. They had just reached the table when Vivica's voice cut through the ambient noise. "Ava, dear, come here a moment." Cam and Ava exchanged glances. Vivica stood near the catering tent, beckoning imperiously. "Want me to come with you?" Cam asked quietly. Ava hesitated, then shook her head. "I'll be fine. It's probably nothing." Cam watched as his daughter walked across the lawn to her step-grandmother. Even from a distance, he could read Vivica's body language, the stiff posture, the tight smile, the calculating look. Nothing good ever came from that look. Cam tried to keep Ava in his sight line as he circled the edge of the party. He nodded to acquaintances and deflected conversations, all while watching his daughter being led into the catering tent by Vivica. 10 minutes later, Ava emerged wearing an apron over her lavender dress. She carried a tray of appetizers, offering them to guests with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Vivica followed close behind, murmuring instructions. Cam's blood began to boil. He started toward them, but was intercepted by Jeffrey Hollingsworth's business partner. "Cameron, haven't seen you since the Christmas party. How's the contracting business?" "Fine," Cam said shortly, trying to move past him. "Excuse me, I've been meaning to call you. We're looking at renovating the lake house, and I remember Taryn saying you do excellent work." Cam barely heard him. Across the lawn, he could see Vivica steering Ava toward a group of older women, all wearing expressions of disdain as they took in the teenager's appearance. "Sorry, Tom. I need to check on my daughter," Cam said. Not caring if he sounded rude, he made his way through the crowd, his jaw set. As he approached, he heard Vivica's voice, pitched deliberately louder than necessary. "I do try to guide her toward more appropriate attire, but you know how teenagers are. And without a proper maternal influence during those formative years." The women murmured sympathetically, eyeing Ava like a specimen. Ava's face remained carefully blank as she offered the tray. "What's going on here?" Cam asked, stepping beside his daughter. Vivica's eyebrows rose in false surprise. "Cameron, there you are. Ava was just helping us serve. So kind of her to volunteer." "I don't recall her volunteering," Cam said coolly. "Well, everyone pitches in at family gatherings," Vivica replied with a thin smile. "Isn't that right, ladies?" The women nodded, though Cam noticed none of their children were wearing aprons or serving food. "Ava, take that off," Cam said, gesturing to the apron. "You're a guest, not staff." "Now, Cameron," Vivica began, her voice honeyed with condescension, "there's nothing wrong with teaching young girls to be useful. Then perhaps your granddaughters could use some lessons," Cam replied, nodding toward a cluster of teenage girls taking selfies near the rose garden. "They seem to have plenty of free time." Vivica's smile vanished. "Those girls are entertaining the Caldwell's daughter. It's called being sociable, something Ava might learn if she'd put down her books occasionally." Cam felt Ava tense beside him. He was about to respond when Taryn appeared, her face flushed. "There you all are," she said brightly, her eyes darting nervously between Cam and her mother. "What's going on?" "Your mother volunteered Ava to serve food," Cam said bluntly. "Oh," Taryn blinked. "Well, that's nice of her to help out." "It's not nice. It's inappropriate," Cam said. He turned to Ava. "Take off the apron. You're here to enjoy the party." Ava glanced between Cam and Vivica, clearly torn. Vivica's expression had hardened into stone. "It's okay, Dad," Ava said quietly. "I don't mind helping. See, Cameron?" Vivica said with a triumphant smile. "The girl understands the value of contribution, even if you don't." Cam opened his mouth to argue, but Ava touched his arm. "Please, Dad," she whispered. "Don't make a scene. I really don't mind." The plea in her eyes stopped him. He took a deep breath, reining in his anger. "Fine," he said tightly. "But you serve for 20 minutes, no more. Then you're done." "Of course," Vivica said smoothly. "We wouldn't want to overtax her." Cam watched as Vivica led Ava away, his fists clenched at his sides. Taryn remained, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "You're overreacting," she said once her mother was out of earshot. "Mother just wants Ava to feel included." "Bullshit," Cam snapped. "She's singling her out, and you know it. That's not fair. Mother has always tried to welcome Ava into the family. By making her serve food while her step-cousins take selfies? That's your idea of welcome." Taryn's face hardened. "You never try to understand my family. You walk around with this chip on your shoulder, judging everyone." "I judge actions, Taryn, and your family's actions toward my daughter speak volumes." "Our daughter," Taryn corrected, "and maybe if she made more effort to fit in." "Fit in?" Cam's voice rose slightly. "She's 14. She shouldn't have to fit into her own family." Taryn glanced around nervously. "Keep your voice down. People are looking. Let them look." "God, you can be so common sometimes," Taryn hissed. She turned and stalked away, rejoining her mother's circle. Cam stood alone, seething. From across the lawn, he watched as Ava continued to circulate with her tray, her posture growing more rigid. He saw Brantley approach her, saying something that made her lips tighten. Then, to Cam's dismay, he noticed Brantley casually lift his phone, angling it toward Ava as she walked away. Was he filming her? Cam started toward him, but at that moment he caught sight of Vivica leading Taryn and several women toward the patio where Ava was now serving drinks. Their voices carried across the lawn. "Just don't understand why she insists on wearing that dreadful dress," Vivica was saying. "It looks like something from a thrift store. I bought her a perfectly beautiful yellow sundress," Taryn added, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "But she's at that age deliberately difficult. It's that stubborn streak from her mother," Vivica said with a dismissive wave. "Some genetic traits are just impossible to breed out." The women tittered politely. Cam saw Ava freeze, the tray in her hands trembling slightly. He was moving before he consciously decided to, crossing the lawn in long strides. But before he could reach them, Ava set down her tray and walked quickly toward him, her face pale but composed. "Dad, I want to go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Okay," Cam said immediately. "Let's go." "No," she said, catching his arm as he turned toward the house. "Please don't make a scene. They're already talking about me. I don't want to make it worse." "Ava, please, Dad." Her eyes filled with tears. "Just give me a few minutes. I'll be at the car." Cam felt torn between respecting her wishes and confronting those who had hurt her. In the end, Ava's pleading expression decided it. "5 minutes," he said. "I'll meet you there." She nodded gratefully and hurried away, skirting the edges of the party. Cam watched her go, then turned back toward Vivica and Taryn, still holding court on the patio. As he approached, their conversation abruptly halted. Taryn's eyes widened in alarm, but Vivica merely lifted her chin, unrepentant. "Cameron," she said coolly, "is something the matter?" "You know damn well what's the matter," Cam replied, keeping his voice low but intense. "You humiliated my daughter." "I did no such thing," Vivica said, affronted. "If the girl is overly sensitive, that's hardly my fault. The girl has a name. It's Ava. And she's not overly sensitive. You're deliberately cruel." "Cameron," Taryn gasped, "apologize to my mother this instant." "I will not," Cam said, his eyes never leaving Vivica's face. "In fact, I think we're done here. All of us." "What does that mean?" Taryn demanded. "It means I'm taking Ava home. You can stay with your family if you want, but we're leaving. You can't just watch me." Cam turned and walked away, ignoring Taryn's hissed protests and Vivica's icy stare. He was halfway to the house when he heard the distinctive sound of an engine coming up the driveway, a powerful one, by the sound of it that he paused, turning toward the front of the property. The other guests had noticed it too. Conversation faltered as everyone looked toward the source of the interruption. A sleek black SUV pulled into the circular driveway, its tinted windows revealing nothing of the occupants. It came to a stop directly in front of the house, in the spot reserved for the most honored guests. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was tall and elegant in a fitted black pantsuit, her dark hair cut in a sleek bob. Oversized designer sunglasses obscured half her face, but her confident posture made it clear she was unimpressed by the Hollingsworth wealth. Cam felt his breath catch. He hadn't seen Jessa Ray in nearly 5 years, but he recognized her instantly. Why was she here? How had she found them? Across the lawn, he could see Vivica and Taryn staring at the newcomer, their expressions a mixture of confusion and annoyance. Brantley had stepped forward slightly, as though preparing to intercept this uninvited guest. Jessa seemed to take in the scene at a glance. Then, to Cam's astonishment, she cupped her hands around her mouth and called out, "Princess, ready for your surprise?" The entire party seemed to freeze. Forks paused midway to mouths. Conversation died. Every head turned toward the driveway. Movement caught Cam's eye. Ava had emerged from around the side of the house, presumably on her way to the car. She stopped dead at the sound of Jessa's voice, her face transforming from misery to disbelief to joy in seconds. "Jessa," she whispered, loud enough for only those nearby to hear. Then, as Cam watched, his daughter straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked directly toward Jessa. She moved with purpose, ignoring the stares and whispers. When she reached Jessa, the woman pulled her into a fierce hug. Vivica recovered first. She stalked across the lawn, her cream pantsuit radiating indignation. "Excuse me," she said, her voice brittle with forced politeness. "This is a private gathering. May I ask who you are and why you're interrupting my event?" Jessa turned, one arm still draped protectively around Ava's shoulders. She removed her sunglasses, revealing sharp, intelligent eyes that assessed Vivica without a trace of intimidation. "I'm family," she said simply. "I know everyone in this family," Vivica replied coldly. "And you, madam, are not part of it." By now, most of the guests had drifted closer, drawn by the confrontation. Taryn hovered at her mother's shoulder, her face pale. Brantley stood a few feet away, his expression calculating. Jessa smiled, a cool expression that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure there are many things about your family that you don't know, Mrs. Hollingsworth." "How dare you, Aunt Jessa?" Ava interrupted, her voice stronger than Cam had heard it all day. "You came. I promised, didn't I?" Jessa replied, her tone softening as she looked down at Ava. "Sorry it took me so long." Cam moved forward, drawing everyone's attention. "Hello, Jessa," he said quietly. "Cameron," she nodded. "It's been a while. You two know each other?" Taryn asked, looking between them suspiciously. Before Cam could answer, Vivica stepped forward, her patience clearly at an end. "I demand to know what's going on here. Who is this woman, and why is she calling my granddaughter princess?" "She's not your granddaughter," Jessa said flatly. A shocked murmur ran through the assembled guests. Vivica's face turned an alarming shade of red. "How dare you?" she spluttered. "Cameron, control this person." Cam looked at Jessa, then at Ava, who was practically radiating relief. "You should go inside," he told Vivica. "This doesn't concern you. Doesn't concern me." Vivica's voice rose. "This woman crashes my event, insults my family, and you say it doesn't concern me? That's exactly what I'm saying." Taryn stepped forward, her eyes wide with confusion and hurt. "Cameron, what's happening? Who is she to you?" Cam met his wife's gaze steadily. "She's not who she is to me that matters. It's who she is to Ava." "And who is that?" Taryn demanded. "She's her godmother," Cam said. "Chloe chose her, not you people." Taryn looked as though she'd been slapped. "What are you talking about? You never mentioned a godmother." "You never asked," Cam replied simply. "This is absurd." Vivica interjected. "We are Ava's family now. You can't just bring strangers into her life without consulting us." "Jessa isn't a stranger," Cam said. "She was Chloe's best friend. She's known Ava since she was born, and she's my legal trustee," Ava added quietly, "if anything happens to Dad." This revelation caused another wave of whispers. Vivica's face flushed deeper. "That's impossible," she said. "There would have been paperwork." "There were," Jessa interrupted smoothly. "All properly filed and signed. I'm a lawyer, Mrs. Hollingsworth. I know how these things work. So you've been what? Lurking in the background, Taryn asked, her voice rising. Watching us? Judging us? Protecting Ava's interests, Jessa corrected. As I promised Chloe I would. This is outrageous, Vivica hissed. Taryn, control your husband. This woman has no right to be here. I have every right, Jessa said calmly. In fact, I'm here to take Ava for the weekend, as arranged with her father. Arranged? Taryn looked at Cam, betrayal written across her face. You arranged this? Behind my back. I called Jessa last week, Cam admitted. After Ava came home crying because Brantley told her she wasn't a real Hollingsworth. All eyes turned to Brantley, who shrugged unapologetically. Just stating facts. You bastard, Cam growled. Dad. Ava said, tugging at his arm. Can we go now? Please. Cam looked down at his daughter's face, seeing both pleading and determination there. He nodded. We're leaving, he announced. Ava is going with Jessa for the weekend, as planned. She most certainly is not. Vivica declared. Taryn, say something. Taryn looked between her mother and her husband, her composure cracking. You can't just take her, Cameron. We have plans this weekend. Family plans. She's going with family, Cam replied firmly. Her mother's family. I'm her mother now. Taryn burst out. A heavy silence fell. Cam stared at his wife, seeing for the first time just how deeply the gulf between them had grown. No, he said quietly. You're not. You never tried to be. Tears welled in Taryn's eyes. That's not fair. I've done everything. Everything except her, Cam interrupted. Everything except stand up for her when your mother belittled her. Everything except love her for who she is, not who you want her to be. I do love her. Then prove it, Cam challenged. Tell your mother to back off. Tell Brantley to keep his mouth shut. Be on our side for once. Taryn looked desperately toward her mother, who was watching with narrowed eyes. Vivica gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. Taryn faltered. I can't just, that's what I thought, Cam said, disappointment heavy in his voice. Let's go, Ava. He turned toward Jessa and Ava, who were watching with matching expressions of grim resolve. As they moved toward the SUV, Vivica's voice rang out. If you leave with that woman, don't bother coming back. Either of you. Cam paused, turned to face the matriarch one last time. Is that a promise, Vivica? Without waiting for an answer, he placed a hand on Ava's back and guided her to the SUV. Behind them, he could hear Taryn crying and Vivica's sharp, controlled voice offering explanations to the stunned guests. Jessa slid into the driver's seat while Cam and Ava got into the passenger seats. As the engine roared to life, Kim glanced back at the house. Taryn stood alone on the front steps, her perfect appearance now marred by smeared makeup and a crumpled posture. For a moment, he felt a twinge of regret. Then Jessa accelerated down the driveway, and the Hollingsworth estate disappeared behind them. For the first few minutes of the drive, no one spoke. Cam sat in the front passenger seat, his mind racing with everything that had just happened. In the back, Ava stared out the window, her expression unreadable. Jessa broke the silence. You okay, princess? Ava met her eyes in the rearview mirror. I think so. Just processing. Understandable. That was quite an exit. I can't believe you showed up like that. Ava said, a hint of admiration in her voice. It was like something from a movie. Jessa smiled. I was aiming for dramatic rescue, not international incident. How'd I do? 10 out of 10, Ava said, smiling back. Vivica's face when you said you were family. Worth the price of admission, Jessa agreed. Cam watched their interaction with mixed emotions. Seeing Ava smile genuinely for the first time in months warmed his heart, but also drove home how much she'd been suffering. Jessa, he said quietly. Thank you. She glanced at him briefly before returning her eyes to the road. Don't thank me yet. Your wife's going to be out for blood. Taryn's not the one I'm worried about, Cam replied. Vivica will make this as difficult as possible. Let her try, Jessa said, a steely edge to her voice. I've faced worse opponents than a society matron with an inflated sense of importance. Where are we going? Ava asked, leaning forward between the seats. My place, Jessa replied. About 20 minutes outside of town. How's that sound? Perfect, Ava said with evident relief. They drove in silence for a while, leaving the manicured neighborhoods behind and heading into the rolling countryside. Eventually, Jessa turned onto a gravel road that wound through a stand of oak trees. "Almost there," she said. "It's not much, but it's home." As they emerged from the trees, Cam saw a modest but beautiful farmhouse set on a gentle slope. A wraparound porch circled the structure, and a small barn stood nearby. The property wasn't large, but it was well kept, with gardens surrounding the house and a small paddock where 2 horses grazed. "You have horses?" Ava gasped, her face lighting up. "Grace and Apollo," Jessa confirmed. "Do you still ride?" "Not since." Ava trailed off. "Not since your mother died," Jessa finished gently. "She'd be sad about that. She loved watching you ride." Ava nodded, her eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. They pulled up to the house, and Jessa cut the engine. For a moment, no one moved. "I need to tell you both something," Jessa said finally, turning in her seat to face them. "I didn't just come back for a weekend visit." Cam frowned. "What do you mean?" "I've been watching from a distance," Jessa admitted. "Keeping tabs on Ava, as I promised Chloe I would. For a while, things seemed manageable. But lately, I've been hearing things that concern me." "What kind of things?" Cam asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew. "The way the Hollingsworths treat Ava. The comments, the exclusion, the subtle cruelty. It's exactly what Chloe was afraid of when she made me promise to intervene if necessary." "Intervene how?" Ava asked. Jessa reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. "This is a letter Chloe wrote before she died. She asked me to give it to you, Ava, when you were old enough to understand it. I think that time has come." She handed the letter to Ava, who took it with trembling fingers. "Mom wrote this?" she whispered. Jessa nodded. "She knew she was dying. She wanted to make sure you were protected, even after she was gone." Ava unfolded the letter and began to read, her eyes moving rapidly across the page. Cam watched her face change surprise, confusion, understanding, and finally, a deep sadness. "Can I?" she faltered. "Can I be alone for a bit?" "Of course," Jessa said immediately. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right. I kept it ready for you." Ava slipped out of the car and hurried into the house, the letter clutched tightly in her hand. Once she was gone, Cam turned to Jessa. "What exactly did Chloe write in that letter?" Jessa met his gaze steadily. "The truth. About the Hollingsworths. About why she didn't want Ava anywhere near them." "And what truth is that? That they destroyed her?" Jessa said bluntly. "When you and Chloe were going through your divorce, Vivica Hollingsworth hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on her. When they couldn't find anything legitimate, they fabricated evidence. That's why Chloe lost her job at the school. Kim felt like he'd been punched in the gut." "What?" "No, she resigned because of her illness." "That's what she told you to protect you," Jessa said grimly. "The truth is, Vivica spread rumors about Chloe having inappropriate relationships with students. By the time the allegations were proven false, the damage was done. No school would hire her." "Jesus Christ," Cam whispered, his mind reeling. "Why would Vivica do that?" "Because Chloe knew things about the Hollingsworth family that could destroy them. Specifically, about Jeffrey's business practices and Brantley's proclivities." "What proclivities?" Jessa's expression darkened. "The kind that would interest law enforcement. Chloe discovered some files on his computer when she was helping Taryn with a project. Photos of girls who looked young, very young." Cam felt sick. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying Chloe threatened to go to the police and suddenly found herself being investigated instead," Jessa interrupted. "She backed off to protect herself and Ava. Then she got sick and—" She spread her hands in a helpless gesture. "Why didn't she tell me?" Cam demanded, anger and grief churning inside him. "She was trying to protect you," Jessa repeated. "And Ava, she knew if you went after the Hollingsworths, they would use their money and influence to destroy you too. So instead she made you promise to watch over Ava." "Yes, and to intervene if I thought they were hurting her." Jess's eyes bored into his. "They're hurting her, Cam. Today proved that." Cam ran a hand over his face, his mind racing. Everything he thought he knew about the past 5 years was suddenly cast in a different light. His marriage to Taryn, Vivica's subtle hostility toward Ava, Brantley's inappropriate comments, it all made a terrible kind of sense now. "What's in a letter?" he asked finally. "Chloe's account of what happened," Jessa replied, "and a request for Ava to trust me if I ever came for her." "Came for her?" Cam's head snapped up. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm here to help you get Ava away from the Hollingsworths," Jessa said firmly. "Permanently." Cam stared at her. "You're talking about custody." "I'm talking about protection," Jessa corrected. "The Hollingsworths are dangerous, Cam. Not just emotionally abusive, though they certainly are that, but actually dangerous." "I'm still her father," Cam said. "I have custody." "Shared custody," Jessa pointed out, "with Taryn, who's completely under her mother's thumb." The implications hit Cam like a freight train. If what Jessa was saying was true, then Ava had been living under the same roof as people who had destroyed her mother's reputation and possibly her career. People who might have contributed to the stress that exacerbated Chloe's illness. People who could hurt her in ways he hadn't even considered. "What do you suggest?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion that Jess's expression softened slightly. "First, give Ava time to process what she's learned. Then we need to talk about legal options. I've been building a case documenting instances of emotional abuse, gathering witness statement from teachers and neighbors." "Like Nell Harper," Cam murmured. "Exactly. She's been a tremendous help. She saw how the Hollingsworths treated Ava at school functions, heard the things Vivica said when she thought no one was listening." Cam nodded slowly, thinking of his elderly neighbor who had taken such an interest in Ava over the past year. He'd thought it was just kindness from a retired teacher, but now he wondered if there was more to it. "And her grandson, Zion," Jessa continued. "He's been documenting the social media harassment Ava's experienced from Brantley's associates." "Social media harassment?" Cam repeated, alarmed. "What harassment?" Jessa gave him a sympathetic look. "There's a lot you don't know, Cam. Ava's been protecting you as much as you've been trying to protect her." The weight of his failure crashed down on him. He'd known things were bad, but he'd had no idea how bad. He'd let his daughter suffer in silence while he tried to navigate a marriage that had clearly been doomed from the start. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "First, you read this," Jessa said, reaching in her bag and pulling out a journal bound in soft blue leather. "It's Chloe's journal. She wrote it during her last months, meant for Ava when she was older. There's a section for you, too." Cam took the journal with unsteady hands. "Chloe wrote this for me. For both of you," Jessa confirmed. "She wanted you to know the truth, but only when Ava was ready to hear it, too." Cam stared down at the journal, recognizing Chloe's handwriting on the first page. A message to their daughter, written with the knowledge that she wouldn't live to deliver it herself. "Read it," Jessa said gently. "Then we'll talk about what comes next." Cam sat on Jessa's porch, Chloe's journal open in his lap. He'd been reading for over an hour, occasionally having to stop when the emotions became too overwhelming. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the property. Through the journal's pages, Chloe's voice came alive again, her wit, her warmth, her fierce love for their daughter. She wrote about her suspicions regarding the Hollingsworths, her discovery of Brantley's disturbing photographs, and her subsequent confrontation with Vivica. The entry that hit Cam hardest was dated just 2 weeks before her death. "I worry about Ava if she ends up with Taryn's family. They value appearance over substance, money over character, and control over love. I've seen how they treat people they consider beneath them with a casual cruelty that's almost more damaging than outright hostility. It's like death by 1,000 cuts that I made Cameron promise to protect her. But I know how persuasive Vivica can be, how she wraps manipulation in a veneer of concern. And Taryn has always sought her mother's approval above all else. So I've asked Jessa to be my eyes when I'm gone, to watch over Ava and to intervene if necessary. I've set aside funds for legal battles. God knows the Hollingsworths will fight dirty if it comes to that. But Ava's spirit is worth fighting for. She must never become one of them." Cam closed the journal, his heart heavy with guilt and grief. He should have seen it sooner, the subtle ways Vivica undermined Ava, the passive-aggressive comments, the deliberate exclusion. He'd noticed some of it, of course, but he'd underestimated how deeply it affected his daughter, and he'd completely missed the darker currents underneath. The screen door opened behind him, and Ava stepped out onto the porch. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry, and she had changed out of the lavender dress into jeans and a t-shirt that must have belonged to her mother. It hung loose on her slender frame. "Hey," she said softly, sitting beside him on the porch swing. "Hey," Cam replied. "You okay?" Ava considered the question. "Not really, but better somehow. Like I finally understand things I've been confused about for years." "I'm so sorry, Ava," Cam said, his voice rough with emotion. "I didn't know about any of it. Mom didn't want you to know," Ava said simply. "She wrote that in her letter. She was protecting us both. I should have protected you better. You did your best, Dad." Ava leaned against his shoulder. "It's not your fault. I'm married into that family," Cam said bitterly. "I brought them into your life. You were trying to give me a mother," Ava said. "I understand that now." They sat in silence for a while, the porch swing creaking gently as they rocked. "Can I ask you something?" Cam said eventually. "Sure. Was Taryn ever kind to you when we weren't around other people?" Ava considered this. "Sometimes. In the beginning. She tried, I think. But whenever Vivica was around, when we went to family events, it was like she became a different person. Like she had to choose between me and them. And she always chose them." Cam nodded, remembering all the times Taryn had stood by silently while her family belittled Ava. All the times she'd made excuses for their behavior, or worse, joined in. "What happens now?" Ava asked quietly. "That depends," Jessa said, appearing in the doorway with a tray of drinks. "On what you both want." She set the tray down on a small table and handed them each a glass of lemonade before taking a seat in a nearby chair. "I want Ava safe," Cam said firmly, "away from the Hollingsworth's influence. And I want to stay with Dad," Ava added. But what princess?" Jessa prompted gently. "But I don't want to go back to that house," Ava admitted. "Not with Taryn there." Cam felt a pang of sadness, but also relief. He'd been wrestling with the same conclusion himself. "There are options," Jessa said, sipping her lemonade. "Legal ones and less conventional ones." "I'm listening," Cam said. "Option 1. You file for divorce and full custody," Jessa outlined. "We present evidence of emotional abuse and create a case that living with Taryn is detrimental to Ava's well-being." "They'll fight it," Cam said. "Vivica has half the judges in the county in her pocket." "They will," Jessa agreed. "But we have something they don't." "What's that?" Ava asked. "The truth," Jessa said simply. "And evidence to back it up." "What kind of evidence?" Cam asked. "Testimonials from teachers about Ava's declining emotional state. Documentation of Brantley's inappropriate behavior toward her. Social media posts where he and his friends mocked her. The video he took today without her consent. You saw that?" Cam asked, surprised. "I see everything," Jessa said with a small smile. "It's my job to see everything when it comes to protecting Ava and the less conventional options." Cam prompted that Jessa's expression turned serious. "You could leave. Take Ava and start fresh somewhere the Hollingsworths can't find you. I have connections who could help." "You mean run away?" Ava asked, her eyes wide. "It would be a last resort," Jessa assured her. "But it's an option if things get ugly. The Hollingsworths play dirty, and they have resources. So do we," Cam said firmly. "I won't run. Not from them." Jessa studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I hoped you'd say that. Running would mean giving up everything you've built here, your business, your home. None of that matters compared to Ava's well-being." "What about option 3? Ava asked. "Is there an option 3? Jessa and Cam exchanged a look. "Option 3 is we fight fire with fire," Jessa said carefully. "We use what we know about the Hollingsworths against them." "You mean about Brantley?" Ava asked. "The photos Mom found. That and other things," Jessa confirmed. "Your mother discovered financial irregularities in the Hollingsworth businesses. That's actually what led her to the photos. She was looking for budget documents on Taryn's computer and found a hidden folder of Brantley's." "What kind of irregularities?" Cam asked. The kind that would interest the IRS, Jessa said. Shell companies, hidden assets, possible money laundering through their real estate developments. Cam absorbed this information, turning it over in his mind. If what Jessa was saying was true, the Hollingsworths weren't just emotionally abusive, they were criminals. Would using that information put Ava at risk? He asked. Potentially, Jessa admitted, but it might also give us leverage to negotiate a clean break. The Hollingsworths value their reputation above all else. The threat of exposure might be enough to make them back off. I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me, Ava said quietly. Cam put an arm around her shoulders. This isn't because of you, Ava. None of it is. The Hollingsworths have made their own choices, and now they have to live with the consequences. Your father's right, Jessa added. And sometimes, the only way to stop a bully is to stand up to them. Ava nodded slowly. What do we do first? First, Jessa said, you both stay here tonight. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we could talk to Nell and Zion Harper. They've been gathering evidence of their own. Nell knew about all this. Cam asked, still trying to process the extent of the network Jessa had built to protect his daughter. Nell was Chloe's teacher in high school, Jessa explained. They stayed close. When Chloe got sick, she asked Nell to keep an eye on Ava too. That's why she moved next door, Ava realized. I always wondered why she was so interested in me. She loves you, Jessa said simply. We all do. Enough to fight for you. Sunlight filtered through the curtains of Jessa's guest room, waking Cam from a fitful sleep. For a moment, he was disoriented, the events of the previous day flooding back in a rush. The barbecue, Vivica's cruelty, Jessa's arrival, Chloe's journal. It felt almost dreamlike in the quiet morning. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. On the bedside table, Chloe's journal lay where he'd placed it after staying up late, reading more of her entries. Her words had solidified his resolve. He knew what he had to do. After showering and dressing, he found Jessa in the kitchen, laptop open on the counter, a cup of coffee in hand. Morning, she said without looking up. Coffee's fresh. Ava's still asleep. Let her rest, Cam replied, pouring himself a cup. She needs it. How are you holding up? Jessa asked, finally glancing at him. I've made my decision, Cam said, his voice steady. I want full custody of Ava, and I want the Hollingsworths out of our lives for good. Jessa nodded, unsurprised. I figured. I've already started the paperwork. She turned her laptop toward him, revealing a document titled Petition for Sole Custody. You work fast, Cam observed. I've had this ready for months, Jessa admitted, just waiting for the right moment. Cam took a seat at the counter, studying the document. So what happens now? First, we file this, Jessa explained, all business now. Then we serve Taryn. Once that's done, we can request an emergency hearing for temporary custody while the case proceeds. How long will all that take? The filing can be done today. Serving Taryn might take a day or two, depending on where she is. The emergency hearing could be as soon as next week. Cam nodded, trying to absorb the rapid timeline. And you think we have enough evidence to win? It's not just about the evidence, Jessa said. It's about strategy. The Hollingsworths will try to paint you as an unstable, controlling husband who's trying to cut Taryn off from her stepdaughter. We need to control the narrative. How do we do that? By making this about Ava, not about you and Taryn, Jessa replied. We present evidence of the emotional toll the Hollingsworth behavior has taken on her. School reports showing declining grades after certain family events. Testimony from her counselor about anxiety and depression. Nell Harper's observations. And Zion's documentation of the social media harassment, Cam added, remembering their conversation from the previous night. Exactly, Jessa nodded. But we also need to be prepared for the Hollingsworths to fight dirty. They'll try to discredit you, possibly bring up your military service, suggest PTSD or instability. Cam's jaw tightened. Let them try. My service record is clean. I know, Jessa assured him. I've vetted everything. But we should still be prepared. They were interrupted by the sound of Ava's footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking younger than her 14 years in an oversized t-shirt and sleep-rumpled hair. Morning, she said, stifling a yawn. Morning, princess, Jessa replied with a warm smile. Hungry, Ava nodded, sliding onto a stool beside Cam. He put an arm around her shoulders and gave her a brief squeeze. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Better than I have in months," Ava admitted. "No one knocking on my door, telling me my outfit is wrong or my hair needs fixing." The simple statement, delivered without self-pity, twisted something in Cam's chest. How much had his daughter been enduring without him noticing? "Ava," he began carefully, "I need to ask you something important, something that will affect both of us." She looked at him, suddenly alert. "Okay, I'm going to file for divorce," Cam said, watching her face. "And I'm going to ask for full custody of you. But I want to know how you feel about that." Ava was quiet for a long moment. "Will I have to see Taryn? Or Vivica?" "Not if you don't want to," Cam assured her. "That's the whole point, to get you away from their influence." "Will we stay in our house?" Cam hesitated. "I don't know yet. We might need to move, at least temporarily." Ava nodded, processing this. "I don't care about the house," she said finally. "I just want to be with you, away from them." "It won't be easy," Cam warned her. "The Hollingsworths will fight." "I know," Ava said, a glimpse of steel showing in her young face. "But Mom would want us to fight back." She said so in her letter. Cam felt a surge of pride at his daughter's courage. "Then that's what we'll do. There's one more thing," Jessa interjected, her expression serious. "We need to discuss Brantley." Ava tensed visibly. "What about him?" "Your mother found evidence that he had inappropriate photographs," Jessa said carefully. "Did he ever make you uncomfortable?" "Jessa," Cam warned, not wanting to distress Ava further. "It's okay, Dad," Ava said quietly. "Brantley never touched me, if that's what you're asking. But he said things sometimes. Weird comments about how I was filling out or how I'd be a knockout when I got older. And he took pictures of me without asking. Like yesterday at the barbecue," Cam said, remembering what he'd seen. Ava nodded. "He does it all the time. Then they show up on Instagram or Snapchat with captions, making fun of my clothes or my hair." Cam felt his blood begin to boil. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to make things worse," Ava said, looking down. "You and Taryn were already fighting so much about her family." Jessa reached across the counter and squeezed Ava's hand. "You don't have to protect the adults in your life, Ava. That's our job, to protect you." "I know that now," Ava said. "After reading Mom's letter, I understand a lot more." Jessa's phone buzzed with a message. She checked it and nodded. "Nell and Zion are coming over in an hour. They've got more documentation for us." "Good," Cam said. "The more evidence we have, the better." Later that morning, as Cam watched Ava tentatively approach one of Jessa's horses, he made another decision. The custody battle was just the beginning. The Hollingsworths had destroyed Chloe's reputation, contributed to her suffering in her final months, and then systematically attempted to break Ava's spirit. They needed to face consequences beyond just losing access to his daughter. He turned to Jessa, who stood beside him at the paddock fence. "I want to look into Brantley's business dealings," he said quietly, "and I want to report those photographs to the authorities." Jessa studied him carefully. "That's escalating things significantly." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Cam said firmly. "Men like Brantley don't stop. If he has those kinds of pictures, he's a danger to other girls too." "What about the fallout for Ava?" Jessa asked. "If this becomes public, we keep Ava's name out of it," Cam insisted. "She doesn't need to be involved directly. But I have friends from my military days who work in various agencies now. People who could look into things quietly." Jessa nodded slowly. "If you're going down this path, I have some evidence you should see. Financial records that don't add up. Property deals that appear legitimate on the surface, but show patterns consistent with money laundering." "Good," Cam said, his resolve hardening. "I want all of it." He looked back at Ava, who was now stroking the horse's neck, a peaceful expression on her face for the first time in months. She deserved this peace all the time, not just as a rare respite from constant criticism. "The Hollingsworths have been playing a long game," Cam said, his voice low and determined. "Now it's our turn." The next day, Cam stood in the austere lobby of a nail salon in downtown Asheville. The receptionist eyed him warily as he waited, dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and dark jeans. "Sir, do you have an appointment?" she asked for the second time. "No," Cam replied. but I need to speak with Taryn Hollingsworth Dillard. It's important. Mrs. Dillard is with a client right now. Perhaps you could. I'll wait, Cam said firmly. 20 minutes later, Taryn emerged from the back of the salon, deep in conversation with another woman. She froze when she saw Cam, her practiced smile faltering. Cameron, she said, clearly flustered. What are you doing here? We need to talk, Cam said, standing. Privately. I'm working, Taryn hissed, glancing around nervously. You can't just show up at my business. It's important, Cam repeated. 5 minutes. Taryn looked as though she might refuse, but then she forced a smile and turned to her companion. Bethany, would you excuse me? Family emergency. The woman nodded sympathetically and moved away. Taryn led Cam to a small office at the back of the salon, closing the door behind them. Where have you been? She demanded. You disappeared with Ava for 2 days. Mother is furious. I've been worried sick. I told you we were leaving, Cam said calmly. Ava is safe and happy. With that woman. Taryn spat. Who gave you the right to take my stepdaughter to stay with a complete stranger? Jessa isn't a stranger to Ava, Cam replied. And I have every right to ensure my daughter's well-being by kidnapping her from a family event. It wasn't kidnapping, Taryn. I'm her father, and I'm her stepmother. I have rights too. That's actually why I'm here, Cam said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out an envelope and held it out to her. You've been served. Taryn stared at the envelope, making no move to take it. What is this? Divorce papers, Cam said evenly, and a petition for full custody of Ava. The color drained from Taryn's face. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. On what grounds? Taryn demanded, her voice rising. What possible grounds could you have for taking Ava away from me? Emotional abuse, Cam stated flatly. Neglect. Creating a hostile living environment. Take your pick. That's ridiculous. I've done everything for that girl. Except stand up for her, Cam countered. Except treat her with basic dignity. Except protect her from your mother's cruelty and your brother's inappropriate behavior. Taryn's face flushed with anger. My brother hasn't done anything wrong, and mother has only tried to help Ava fit in. By making her serve food while your nieces take selfies? By mocking her clothes and her interests? By treating her like an intruder in her own family? You're twisting things, Taryn insisted. Mother can be particular, but she loves Ava. No, she doesn't, Cam said bluntly. And deep down you know that. Taryn's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. You can't do this to me. If you file these papers, if you make these accusations, Mother will never forgive me. That's not my problem anymore. She'll cut me off. Taryn cried. The salon, my allowance, everything. Again, not my problem. What about us? Taryn asked, reaching for his arm. We can work this out, Cameron. Come home. Bring Ava back. We'll talk to Mother together. Make her understand that things need to change. Cam gently removed her hand. There's no us anymore, Taryn. There hasn't been for a long time. Because you never tried, she accused. You were always so focused on Ava, so rigid about your boundaries. My daughter will always be my priority, Cam interrupted. And she should have been yours too, if you truly wanted to be your stepmother. Taryn's tears dried up abruptly, her expression hardening. Fine. If this is how you want to play it, then I'll fight you. Mother knows every judge in 3 counties. You don't stand a chance. We'll see, Cam said, placing the envelope on her desk. Court date's in there. I suggest you get a lawyer. Over the next 3 weeks, Cam worked tirelessly with Jessa to build their case. They collected testimonials from Ava's teachers, documentation from her counselor, and damning evidence of social media harassment from Zion Harper's meticulous records. Nell Harper provided a sworn statement detailing the emotional abuse she'd witnessed at school functions and family events. Meanwhile, using contact from his military days, Cam quietly launched an investigation into Brantley's business dealings. He passed along the financial documents Jessa had collected to a former comrade, now working with the IRS. He sent the information about Brantley's disturbing photographs to another contact in law enforcement, carefully keeping Ava's name out of it. Cam and Ava stayed at Jessa's ranch, away from the gossip and scrutiny of the town. Ava began to come out of her shell, spending hours with the horses and reading on Jess's porch. The dark circles under her eyes faded, and she laughed more easily. Cam watched his daughter transform, and his determination only grew stronger. The emergency custody hearing came faster than expected. Judge Abernathy, newly transferred from Charlotte and with no ties to the Hollingsworth family, listened attentively as Jessa presented their evidence. Taryn's expensive lawyer tried to paint Cam as controlling and unstable, but the testimonials from neutral parties like Ava's teachers and counselor were too compelling to dismiss. Based on all available information, Judge Abernathy ruled, "I'm granting temporary full custody to Mr. Dillard, pending the final divorce hearing. Mrs. Hollingsworth Dillard will receive supervised visitation only once weekly at a neutral location, and Mrs. Hollingsworth Dillard's mother is not permitted to attend these visits." "That's outrageous!" Taryn exclaimed. "It's non-negotiable," the judge replied sternly. "If you wish to maintain any relationship with your stepdaughter, these are the terms." As they left the courthouse, Taryn caught up to them on the steps. "This isn't over," she hissed, grabbing Cam's arm. "Mother won't let you get away with this." "Your mother doesn't have a say anymore," Cam replied, removing her hand. "You'll regret this," Taryn warned, her voice breaking. "Both of you." "The only thing I regret," Cam said, "is not seeing the truth sooner." 3 days later, the first domino fell. Cam's phone buzzed with a news alert. Local developer Brantley Hollingsworth arrested on fraud charges. He showed Jessa the headline as they worked on her barn. "It's happening," he said. "They've arrested Brantley." Jessa quickly read the article. Federal agents raided the Hollingsworth development offices, seized computers and financial records. Allegations of money laundering through fake property investments. "Is that because of what we sent them?" Ava asked, appearing from the barn where she'd been brushing the horses. "Partly," Jessa said carefully. "Our information probably helped trigger the investigation, but they would have needed a lot more evidence to make an arrest." "Will he go to jail?" Ava asked, her voice small but steady. "If they can prove what they suspect, yes," Cam told her honestly. "Financial crimes like these carry serious penalties." "Good," Ava said simply. The news spread quickly through Asheville social circles. By evening, additional details had emerged. The IRS had also frozen several Hollingsworth family accounts pending investigation, including Vivica's personal assets. "They're going after all of them," Jessa observed as they watched the local news report. "Not just Brantley." The Hollingsworth scandal dominated local news for the next 2 weeks. More details emerged about the elaborate fraud scheme Brantley had been running using fake property investments to launder money for several wealthy clients, including some with connections to organized crime. Jeffrey Hollingsworth, already weakened by illness, suffered a minor stroke after the arrests and was hospitalized. Through it all, Cam kept Ava insulated from the worst of the publicity. They stayed at Jess's ranch, with a private road and extensive property provided a buffer from curious neighbors and reporters. Ava continued her schoolwork remotely, with plans to transfer to a new school for the upcoming year. The final blow to the Hollingsworth empire came when federal investigators discovered a hidden server in Brantley's home office. On it were thousands of images that resulted in additional, more serious charges, the kind that ensured he would never again be a free man. When Cam learned of this discovery, he felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication that Chloe had been right all along, horror at the extent of Brantley's crimes, and profound relief that Ava had been removed from his orbit before he could harm her. Chloe was trying to protect more than just Ava, Jessa said quietly when the news broke. She knew what Brantley was capable of, what he was doing. She died trying to stop him, and now we've finished what she started, Cam replied, his voice thick with emotion. The family court was quieter than Cam had expected for such a high-profile case. News of Taryn's settlement offer hadn't leaked, so a few reporters lingered in the hallway, hoping for drama that wouldn't materialize. Cam sat beside Jess at the plaintiff's table, dressed in his best suit, the one he'd worn to Chloe's funeral and then to his wedding to Taryn. It felt fitting, somehow, to wear it today as he finally closed these chapters of his life. Across the aisle, Taryn sat with her lawyer, noticeably alone. No Vivica, no family supporters. She looked diminished without her mother's commanding presence beside her, her designer outfit replaced by a simple navy dress that hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight in the weeks since the scandal broke. When she caught Cam looking, she quickly averted her eyes. Judge Abernathy entered the courtroom, and everyone rose. After the formalities, he addressed both parties. "I understand a settlement has been reached in this matter," he said, reviewing the documents before him. "Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Taryn's lawyer confirmed. "Both parties have agreed to the terms outlined in the proposal." "Mr. Dillard," Judge Abernathy looked to Cam. "Do you concur?" "I do, Your Honor," Cam replied. "Very well. Let me review the terms for the record." The judge adjusted his glasses. Mr. Cameron Dillard to receive full legal and physical custody of minor child Ava Dillard. Mrs. Taryn Hollingsworth Dillard to receive supervised visitation twice monthly at a neutral location, contingent upon the minor child's consent. No other members of the Hollingsworth family are to be present during these visitations. He continued through the financial terms a clean break, with each party keeping their personal assets and Cam retaining the house, which had been purchased primarily with his funds. Taryn would receive no alimony, and Cam would pay no financial penalties. "Are there any modifications either party wishes to make before I approve this settlement?" Judge Abernathy asked. Cam glanced at Taryn, who remained silent, her eyes fixed on the table before her. "No, Your Honor," Cam replied. "The terms are acceptable. And you, Mrs. Hollingsworth Dillard." Taryn cleared her throat. "There is one small addition I'd like to request, if I may." "Go ahead." "I'd like to include a provision that, in the event my financial circumstances stabilize, I be permitted to establish a college fund for Ava," Taryn said, her voice quiet but steady, "to be managed by a neutral third party, with no conditions attached for its use." Surprised, Cam looked to Jessa, who raised her eyebrows slightly. "Mr. Dillard," the judge prompted, "do you have any objection to this addition?" Cam considered this unexpected gesture. Was it genuine remorse, or an attempt to salvage her reputation? Either way, it would benefit Ava. "No objection, Your Honor," he said finally, "as long as the fund truly comes with no strings attached." "So ordered," Judge Abernathy ruled. "The settlement is approved with the additional provision regarding the education fund. This court grants full custody of Ava Dillard to Cameron Dillard, with the visitation arrangements as stipulated. The divorce between Cameron Dillard and Taryn Hollingsworth Dillard is granted, effective immediately." He struck his gavel once, the sound marking the definitive end of Cam's marriage and the beginning of a new chapter for him, and AV, as the court adjourned. Cam stood to leave, deliberately avoiding Taryn's gaze. But as he turned to follow Jessa out of the courtroom, he heard Taryn's voice behind him. "Cameron, wait. Please." He paused, signaling to Jessa to go ahead without him. When they were alone, he turned to face his ex-wife. "What is it, Taryn?" She stood before him, clutching her purse like a shield. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything." Cam studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or deceit. But all he saw was exhaustion and what appeared to be genuine regret. "Are you sorry because you lost, or sorry for how you treated Ava?" he asked bluntly. "Both," Taryn admitted, surprising him with her honesty. "At first, I was just sorry I lost. But these past few weeks, I've had a lot of time to think, without Mother telling me what to think or how to feel. And I realized that I was cruel to Ava," Taryn said, her voice breaking slightly. "Not because I wanted to be, but because I was too weak to stand up to Mother. I was too afraid of losing her approval." "You hurt my daughter," Cam said, his voice hard. "Repeatedly. For years." "I know," Taryn whispered. "I can't change that. But I want you to know that the college fund isn't just for show. I want to do something good for her, even if she never wants to see me again." Cam was silent for a long moment. "Ava said something interesting yesterday," he said finally. "She said she was sad for you. That maybe someday you two could talk without Vivica's influence." Hope flickered across Taryn's face. "She said that. She has more compassion than either of us deserve," Cam said. "It comes from her mother." Taryn nodded, acknowledging the truth of this. Chloe was She was a better person than I ever gave her credit for. Yes, she was. Will you tell Ava? Taryn hesitated. Will you tell her I'm trying to be better? That I'm getting therapy, trying to figure out who I am without Mother controlling everything? I'll tell her, Cam promised. The rest is up to her. Taryn nodded again, tears spilling down her cheeks. Thank you. As Cam turned to leave, she called after him one more time. Cameron? He looked back. Take care of her, Taryn said softly. She deserves so much better than what we gave her. That's one thing we agree on, Cam replied, then walked away, leaving Taryn standing alone in the empty courtroom. The farmhouse kitchen was filled with morning sunlight and the smell of coffee. Cam stood at the stove, flipping pancakes while Ava set the table, moving with the easy confidence that had blossomed in her over the past year. Don't forget Jessa likes the sugar-free syrup, Ava reminded him, placing 3 plates on the weathered oak table. Got it, Cam replied, sliding a pancake onto a waiting plate. How many for you? 3, Ava decided, pulling her hair back into a ponytail. At 15, she had grown taller, her face losing some of its childish roundness. She wore jeans and a riding jersey, ready for her morning lesson with the horses. Through the window, Cam could see Jessa in the paddock, already working with Apollo on a lunging line. The sight of her confident, strong, completely at home in this life they had built together filled him with a quiet contentment. After the custody battle and the subsequent implosion of the Hollingsworth Empire, Jessa had invited them to stay at the ranch until things settled down. Days had turned into weeks, weeks into months, and eventually they had all acknowledged the obvious this was where they belonged. Cam had converted the old barn into a workshop for his contracting business, which had thrived despite the Hollingsworth's attempts to blackball him among their social circle. Word had spread about the quality of his work, and many of their former associates quietly hired him once Vivica's influence waned. Jessa's coming in, Ava announced, glancing out the window. Should I pour her coffee? She'd appreciate that, Cam replied with a smile. The screen door opened, and Jessa entered, bringing the fresh scent of morning air with her. Apollo's in fine form today, she said, accepting the mug Ava handed her. You're going to have a great lesson. Thanks for setting up early, Ava said. I want to practice before the show next weekend. You'll do great, Jessa assured her, sitting at the table. Your form has improved so much. Cam brought the stack of pancakes to the table, and they settled into their familiar morning routine. It wasn't a conventional family by any means, but it worked. Jessa had become an essential part of their lives, a mentor to Ava and a steadfast friend to Cam. They shared a deep bond forged in battle and cemented by their mutual love for Ava and their memories of Chloe. 3 weeks from now, Ava would compete in her first major riding competition. Cam had, after much consideration, invited Taryn to attend. She would sit with Nell Harper, with no obligation for Ava to interact with her unless she chose to. It was a small opening, not forgiveness that would take much longer if it ever came, but an acknowledgement that healing was possible, even after the deepest wounds. As Cam watched his daughter laugh at something Jessa said, he felt a profound sense of rightness. The Hollingsworths had fallen, not through dramatic confrontation, but through the quiet exposure of their own corruption. Justice had been served, not with fanfare, but with the steady turning of legal wheels set in motion by truth. And Ava, the silent victim in it all, had emerged stronger, her spirit intact, her future bright. She had found her voice, her confidence, and her place in a family built not on blood or obligation, but on choice and love. That, Cam knew, was the greatest victory of all.